Okay, now we're really on. Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to India Game Changer. We have Purnank, Prakash, and Mayank Banka with us today, the co-founders of Samaaro. Now, normally what you'd say is there are two A's there, but for those discerning people out there that are going to come after me, there are three A's, but two in a row. Anyway, guys, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Oh, no, it's completely my pleasure. And before we get into the central part of this conversation, and Purnank, why don't we start with you? Let's get a little bit of your backgrounds, just for some context.
All right. Thank you, Michael, for the opportunity. Excited to be here with you, talking about the India Game Changer. I think the topic in itself is fascinating.
Thank you.
Let's start with about me. So me and Mayank, actually, our story goes together. We studied in the same college. We have been friends for the last 13 years. We met each other in the first year of the college itself. So after graduation in 2014, I moved on to work with a company that is based out of Germany, SAP Labs. After working there for a year, I started my entrepreneurship journey with Mayank. So in 2015, we started the parent company of our product today. The parent company's name is Technology Private Limited, and obviously the brand name is Samaaro that we are publishing. So from 2015 onwards till now, me and Mayank have been founders for the last 8 years. And I think the journey has been a kind of a roller coaster. Most of it has been ups, and I'm excited to talk about that. So I primarily take care of the product and technology part, Michael, in Samaaro. I think Mayank will talk more about his role when he gives his introduction.
Thank you, Michael, first of all, for the opportunity here. So yes, I'm basically come from Delhi, and like Punank's already covered that we studied together in NID Trichy. Post that, I started working for a company called EXL, and then followed by Souk, which is basically acquired by Amazon. It's an e-commerce platform based out of Middle East for about a year and a half as a product analyst. And then we jumped on to, came together to start Samaaro. So the whole idea there was that, we wanted to do something for India in general first. And one thing that, is in fact true and probably also stereotype, which is that India is not a country that leads the technology curve, right? It's never been like that. It's changing a lot right now. I think India is one of the biggest ecosystem for SaaS startups, health tech startups, fintech startups. But that was not the case maybe 8, 10 years down the line earlier. So we wanted to sort of revolutionize that, change that. We wanted to digitize India. And one way we thought that we could do is by introducing experiential technologies in events. So what we started doing is we started working with a lot of brands for their marketing activations, product launches, annual day celebrations, or even a fun Friday at times. And during these times, we introduced technologies like AR, VR, gesture-based IoT, sometimes even neurological headsets to sort of create experiential games and engage the audience here. Things have been going pretty well for us. Things went, we were a bootstrap company for the first 5 years of our journey, and we were even extremely profitable. We had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest brands like Facebook, Amazon, Paytm here in India, Tech Mahindra, Adobe, Bank of America. So the list was huge until the pandemic happened. So everyone's aware, event industry probably along with travel and tourism was one of the worst affected industries, right? Yeah. So that is when the revenues came down to a standstill. It literally came to a zero. And that's when we decided that okay, based on our experience of the event industry so far, and we sort of understand why people host events, right? It's to build engagement, to build a community. It could be an internal community for your employees or an external community of customers and other stakeholders. So that was the whole idea behind launching Samaaro as a virtual events platform initially, so that brands who could not host events anymore to engage their audiences could now do that on Samaaro. that's when we started getting a lot of traction. We had launched Samaaro in June 2020, and almost about 5 months down the line, we were recognized as one of the best Tech 30 startups by Your Story in India. So that was a significant milestone. And post that, we raised around a couple of rounds of funding as well, because we started seeing a lot of traction globally. Now here we are, when we are probably moving towards a post-pandemic era, and people are sort of going back to physical events, but with now an understanding of how technology can actually influence the entire event industry's ecosystem. So what we're doing now is, we're hosting virtual events, but at the same time, we're also adding multiple layers of technologies for physical events as well, which would enhance the experience for registrations, conferencing, networking, and exhibitions.
I want to get back to both of those things in a second, but you launched, if I have this right, back in 2015. So you've been at this for a while, and the business has kind of gone through multiple iterations, but two really big ones. And I think at some level there have been two other big changes, which both of you mentioned, right? And I want to kind of address these first, because I don't think we can address those without addressing
Mhm.
what you're building. The first
Yeah.
is this idea that like India was not a technology leader. Maybe that was true 10 years ago, but I need to push back on that super hard today, because today I feel like India is a gigantic tech leader. That's the whole point of India Game Changers, try to figure out how and why.
It is.
We can pick out individual events like UPI as one of them to make payments just completely frictionless in a way that hadn't existed until Pay Now in Singapore and different countries. But the second thing is, it used to be building things for other people, and now it's building things, it's India for India, right? And then moving the products externally, right? Because if it works inside of India with all the idiosyncrasies and all the different states and all the different regions, all the different languages and cultures, if it can work there, well, then sure, it should work in Europe with some tweaks and stuff, and it should work in the US as well. Can you address what had to change, both technologically and maybe just psychologically, for those two things to have changed as well? And then we'll dig deeper into Samaaro.
Sure, Michael. So the thing that I believe the most is that internet sort of changed everything for India. Right? Pre-Geo, pre 2016, I think 2016 is when Geo was launched. When people started getting free internet, that is when the entire dynamics of how people consumed information and how people leveraged technologies
Interesting.
changed entirely. Right before that, we would get sort of about 1 GB of data at about $2 prices, right? But now, we're getting, like, India is one of those countries where internet is the cheapest globally. So that changed a lot for India, and that actually I personally feel is when a lot of startups coming in around the consumer segment.
I was just adding a couple of more points here, that how the shift happened in the Indian industry. If you talk about how the products are built, how the services are deployed. So I have to go back to the era of 1992 when the IT revolution took place. So India was not a very major force in the globalization. It used to only be limited as a country itself. It did not have much trade happening within different countries. But in 1992, when the IT revolution happened, India started providing services to different countries. So that was a time when people started getting exposure of how the work is happening in different countries, how the tech is evolving. Till that time, nobody was even aware that how technology can be even used. Everything was happening manually. From 1992 to another 10 years, 2002, 2003, in that 10 year, a lot of Indians, they learned about how they can actually use the technology. And from 2003 onwards, the second generation of the Indians who had seen their seniors working for different companies in across the world, they started thinking on the same lines and started building their own products. So you can see Infosys was there, then TCS. These are really giant service providers across the world. But after them, you can see the Flipkart happening in India, that is
Yeah.
based on the idea of Amazon. Again, Ola happened, that was based on the idea of Uber. So we started taking some ideas from the Western countries and started implementing them. And when they became successful, that gave a lot of hope to Indians that they can also build successful tech companies in India. And from there onwards, internet penetration, as Mayank said, that obviously gave a lot of boost, and people started thinking of their own ideas. Now the new generation of entrepreneurs who are there in India, they are not thinking about just copying the ideas. They have broken that stereotype. Now they are thinking that what can be the innovative new thing that they can build for the world from India. And I think Samaaro also is based on that same ideology, built from India for the world.
Do you feel like, and maybe you can remember this, right, where you were sitting around in a cafe one day or having a beer with somebody or just at lunch, and you thought you heard conversations change. Do you know what I mean? Even amongst yourselves, where you were like, you know what, I have my own idea. And instead of copying something that's already been done, why don't we try this instead? Because now things have changed. Did you feel like that actually happened, or was it something that happened so slowly and through such a long sort of evolutionary period that it just kind of happened naturally, or did people actually talk about it?
What happened is that we started making our new heroes, Michael. Like you know, Sachin Bansal, Benny Bansal, they launched Flipkart. It was a huge success in 2013 and 2014. And we were in college that time. Before that, when we were in school, there was no talk happening about startups or launching their own company. Our parents generally used to talk about that you should become an engineer or a doctor or work for some other company.
Right.
But when we were in college, we started hearing the stories that these are two guys who have built company from scratch, raised so much funding, the business is doing so amazing. And we thought, why to work for someone else? Why not build our own thing that can give India another stage, another opportunity for the people who want to work for an Indian company that is doing great work. So that type of discussion started happening. And me and Mank, actually, we did a small venture in our college days where we were printing t-shirts and then like selling it to different people. So the t-shirts, the idea was that the people used to tell us that whatever design they want, and then we used to give them. So this was just a I think trial phase for us, that if we can do something like this. So it happened on a very nominal basis. We did well, and from there onwards that thought kept on building, that yes, there is something in this area, in this career stream, and we can build something big out of this.
I love this, and that's exactly what I want to know. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll add a point here. So I think a lot of things that, among a lot of things that changed, Michael, one of the things that also changed was, our ability to probably take risks, right? Initially, like Purnank mentioned, the doctors, engineers were probably, one of the safest jobs. And
Yeah.
even, that took some time to evolve, right? From our parents wanting us to take a government job, that was a very
Safety,
strong
stability.
sentiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And right now, maybe, 2010 onwards, we started seeing a trend where people were not afraid to take risks. People were not afraid anymore to fail. So that is when probably, entrepreneurship as a sentiment started developing or evolving within the Indian mindset.
I love these stories. Let's dig a little bit deeper into Samaaro. Look, the big event that's happened in all of our lives that we've all shared is the pandemic, right? And I think at some level we're all tired of talking about it. But it did impact business. And you can see me holding up, like, there's this part of the business before it was there, and then the pandemic, and thinking, now what do we do? What do you learn? And I'm really interested in this, right? Because you came out of it, and a lot of people didn't come out the other end, but you kind of came out of it with now this ability to do hybrid events, right? So it's really, really different, but you must have learned a ton from doing online events only and all the like nuances and idiosyncrasies around that. And then to feed that into these hybrid events. I'm super curious about that progression as well.
Oh yes, definitely. I remember having a conversation with one of my friend who had also started up something in the restaurant sector, and they had actually started somewhere around 2016, 15, 16, I think, and they shut down the operations in 2018. And I remember having a conversation with this guy during the peak of the pandemic, and he was telling me if they hadn't shut down the businesses already in 2018, then they probably would have had to do that in during the pandemic, right? Because again, restaurant industry was one of
Yeah,
the
just
worst affected industries. People did adapt to cloud kitchen, but not everyone was able to survive. We saw a lot of restaurants shutting down as well. So we sort of had a similar experience, because our revenues came down to a standstill, and I'll be honest, and Purnank and I were in fact having this conversation whether we should just shut down operations
Yeah,
or
it's hard.
and consider moving on. But then one thing that I strongly believe that Purnank and I have is perseverance, right? And we thought that in order to succeed, we need to show some kind of resilience here, and at the same time, we were very optimistic because our customers were still talking to us. We were a technology company, and they were still sort of asking us for some sort of help, some sort of they were giving us ideas on what we could do to help them survive, and that in turn would help us would keep us stand on our feet as well. So that is when we thought that instead of shutting down operations, let's just do a little bit of retrospection. Let's bring all of our learning together, and we have been a service-based company for the last 5 years. Let's crystallize all of our learning and start building a product. We were getting too comfortable in what we were doing, so we thought that it may be a good opportunity to now come out of that comfort zone and start pushing ourselves again, start getting into that startup mindset, start getting into that ARR, MRR, seed round, Series A, that kind of mindset again. So that is when we thought, okay, let's give it a shot. Let's build a startup which we can also scale to at a global level, and that's how we started Samaaro.
One more thing I would like to add here, Michael. When we started our entrepreneurship journey, we were young kids. Like I think we were 22, 23, and pandemic showed us for the first time in our career that how much important is being humble.
Yeah.
Nothing is permanent. Things can change within a blink of an eye, and you can't take something very personally that this is what I want to do and this is I live for. The idea of entrepreneurship is something where you have to keep evolving, and that was the lesson we learned the hard way. We had to actually evolve ourselves when the pandemic hit. There are a lot of people who had to shut down their business, and kudos to them that they took the right decision, what actually made sense for them at that time. And it made sense for us as well, that we should also think about our options, but also the surrounding that you be in. We had a team of around 15 people who were with us when the revenue had hit zero, and we didn't want to just close the business right away. We sat with them, we discussed that what can we do as the next option. And I think when the right people with their heart in the right place think about a very genuine problem to solve, they can come up with brilliant ideas. And that is how I think Samaaro took place. And from there onwards, it has been an amazing journey. So I think we learned a very valuable lesson as an entrepreneur.
If you go through life, right, without any problem, I worry about people actually. This is going to sound counterintuitive, but I worry about some of my friends, right, who've gone through life with just like an upward sloping trajectory where everything's kind of been okay. At least that's the way it looks internally. I mean, internally, we don't know for sure, right? But it's like from one job to a higher paying job, their kids get into a good school, their wives are doing fine. Because as soon as something bad happens, they don't know how to react. And this idea of
Exactly.
building resiliency and perseverance early, right? When everything seems to be going okay, revenues are good, customers love you, and then boom, something exogenous happens, and you're like, well, now what do we
Yeah.
do? Because we've never had this in our own lives before. It's so hard. So there are two things here. Do you feel like there's so much more to learn when things are difficult? And two, do you feel like your company culture is so important that if you have the right culture, it's easier to get through these difficult times? So it's kind of a two-part question. Either one of you can answer.
Yeah, so Michael, the founders actually laid a foundation of the culture in the company, right? Me and Mayank have been very true to our heart when it came to building this company
Yeah.
from the initial days. It has never been about like we want to have a very lavish life, we want to just make a lot of money and just bail out like that. It has always been like that. It's basically this startup is our baby. We want to grow it step by step in the best way possible. And when we made our first hiring, we inculcated the same feeling to our team members as well. So whenever we have any bad time, they know from the initial days that this startup is their own part of life as well.
Right.
They are emotionally attached with that. And whenever we interview people for our company, HR round is actually the most important round. We see that if that person has that genuinity, that true to heart feeling about the vision, the mission that we are working on. So I think the founders laying down the right foundation and then building the right culture is the key to having a resilience business. Like, I'll be wrong if I say that we are not going to face another bad time. We can face another bad time, but right now I am confident that our team whom we have made from the scratch is gonna be there. Even if something happens to me and Mayank, these guys are gonna take the business to another level. So it's not about this is a startup of Mayank and Purnank. This is a startup of the team that is working on it right now. So if we leave the position, someone else can take it up and then grow the company. Because believing in the vision is so much important, and without that, I don't think you can build the right team in first place.
You both mentioned this idea of, revenue went to zero, but you still had your customers calling you. So this is also super interesting because it must mean that there was something there that they saw as well, that even though you hadn't developed it yet, they still wanted to deal with you. Again, it feels like a metaphor for you should always be in constant contact with your clients in good times and in bad times as well, because they probably have the solution to your product problem if you engage with them on a regular basis. Does that sound fair?
Oh, absolutely. I think it would be an understatement to networking is important, right? I think the reason why we are here today, we're talking today, is because the kind of relationships that we have built with our
Yeah.
customers, and it's a very genuine relationship, Michael. I always believe that if I am being honest to myself and if I'm being honest to my customer, then they will come back to me, because ultimately we're all humans here, and you're not going to deal with someone whom you can't trust. So for me, building that relationship with a foundation of trust with anyone. It could be an employee, it could be a customer, it could be our investors. That is very very critical to me, and it's a two-way road here. So, and that is exactly what happened with us. So we've always been talking to our customers very candidly, telling them that okay, if you want to do this for an engagement, it probably will not work. I could have just told them that, yeah, okay, I'll build it for you, right? But that's not how we approached our customers. We would just give them genuine feedback that this is probably not going to work, and for XYZ reason. And that is exactly what happened during the pandemic, right? March 21st, I remember, is when there was a nationwide lockdown, and all of us were like psyched out on what we're going to do about our companies, about life, and people were panicking, etc. So for the first couple of weeks, nothing happened. Everyone was just frozen. And then mid-April onwards, I started, talking to customers, just checking with a few of them. Some of them had shut down operations. They were like, too much debt, can't continue anymore. But then there was some businesses who were still trying. So they were doing a lot of research for us as well. So, they came across a couple of platforms who did these job fairs, or a variety different types of events virtually. So they came to us and they told us, hey, why don't we build something like this? So that is something that also helped us to, ideate over Samaaro and build a platform that eventually, what it is right now.
If I have to sum up it in a gist, Samaaro has always been about the customer obsession and listening to our customers, that what they are saying. So I think that is a very crucial point in our journey. That is why we were able to overcome the bad things, that the bad phase we saw during pandemic, because we were constantly talking to customers. Mine was always in touch with them, that what they are doing, if everything is all right with them. Building a relationship is very important, and that is why when they were sharing their problems with us, that guys, we are not able to host any events, do you have any ideas, we heard them, and we started working on a model, on a prototype, and our team supported in that. And from there onwards, we kept incorporating that feedback, made sure that whatever they were missing, it had the product, had it. And from there onwards, we scheduled, I think first day when we launched our demo, we received 50 calls from our previous customers to actually use the product. So from there, we knew that we had hit the gold mine, and the journey is gonna be upwards from here.
No, I was just gonna say it's such a great feeling when you feel like you've hit on something good. Go ahead, Mayank.
That's a fantastic example. So we used to work with a lot of event management companies, right? And they were affected because they were looking for solutions for their customers, which would be brands directly. We'd been doing that for the last previous 5 years before the pandemic, and now rightly mentioned, when we had some prototype ready, and MVP, you could say, and I decided to send out an email to our customers that, okay, this is what we've been working on, and would you like to see? Within the first 10 minutes, we received 50 calls, and we knew, yeah, that this is probably something that's going to work out now. We definitely don't have to shut operations.
Yeah,
So that
it was
was
a really nice
a
feeling.
eureka moment.
Can we get a really specific here? Because I'm very curious about how this works, right? I've been to online events. Most of them are terrible. And part of the reason why is because they don't mimic real life to me. I have this theory that at some point, whether it's online or offline, that they're going to start mimicking each other, right? That I want to have these serendipitous experiences, right? If I go to an event, I can bump into somebody from high school that I haven't seen in 30 years and just think, sorry, I should be more honest, 40 years, and just think, and just think like, wow, what are you doing here? How did you get into this? Like those types of moments are actually super cool, right? But that's just an example of serendipity.
Yeah.
When you're running these, because I think about immersion all the time, right? Immersive events. I think about them all the time in these experiences, right? Because life itself is super immersive. Like if I walked into your office and I bumped into somebody, literally physically bumped into them, that's an immersive experience. It's not that it hurts. It's just that now I have to do something. How do you use technology to mimic these immersive experiences and these serendipitous experiences in a way that people feel like, whether they're participating online or offline, they're kind of in the same place?
Right. Okay. So Michael, I think I need to tell you a little bit more about the Samaaro's journey to answer this question.
Perfect.
So when we launched Samaaro, it was pandemic all over the world, so no events were happening. So it was the need of the time to launch a virtual event platform, right? So what we intended to do is that we will try to mimic the same experience that were happening in the offline events, while understanding that there are limitations. You won't have that same face-to-face feeling. So we started working on a 3D model kind of a view. So if people were used to host their events in their own office, we were building the same office arena. So if employees are attending that event from their home, they're feeling like, oh, I used to be here, I used to sit here, this is my office's reception, this is my office lobby.
Can I just jump in? Because this is important to me too, as a geek, right? What is the back end technology that you're using to build that?
When you talk about the 3D designs, it's mostly Blender and Unreal Engine that we were using.
That's what I want to know.
And on top of that, there was a lot of layers of different features that we used to provide. Like for networking, there were breakout rooms, group chats, one-on-one conversations. It's a very basic features. Other than that, we had conferencing where you can run polls, quizzes, Q&As, you can raise hand, like how you can do it right now as well.
Okay.
And then we're different rooms altogether. There was a help desk where you can go and talk to the receptionist. Then there was another game room where you can play games with your peers, your colleagues. So we try to create that same immersive experience when you go to attend an event. There are different rooms, you can go there, you can do this. So during the pandemic, it made a lot of sense. But I'll be wrong if I say that that the feeling of immersiveness that is there in the real life, if the platform was able to replicate, because it's a different thing altogether when you see that expression when you're meeting someone for the first time. And an online call, you know exactly, you read the name and then you actually connect with that person, right? But at that time, it did a lot of it made a lot of sense for the people who are looking to host events. But as the market started opening up, as the pandemic receded, we saw there was a surge in the in-person events. People were thinking to come back to the market because of the obvious reason, because you can't replicate that face-to-face event. But one thing which stood out with these event organizers was the data that used to get completely lost in the previous in-person events that they started utilizing through the virtual events. Now there are two attendees who are talking. Maybe one attendee is talking to a brand, and all of this data they are utilizing to make sense if this is my potential customer or this is just a casual walker in my event.
Right.
So they wanted to make use of that. Yes, Mike, you want to add any point on that?
Oh yes, certainly. So another thing that virtual events, changed for the industry is the way we understand how technology could be leveraged in the events industry, right? Post pandemic, or during the pandemic, people started realizing that virtual events have no geographical barriers. You could be hosting an event in LA, and you could see participation from Brazil, Japan, Australia, and any part of the world, right? And that is something that changed the game, changed the dynamics for the
Yeah.
marketeers out there, especially for the outward facing events, which would be like summits, conferences, trade shows, exhibitions. This is where we see hybrids coming in the near future. So we when we talk about hybrid events, people sort of assume that I'm talking about a physical event and a virtual event, and I need to treat them differently. These are two different events, but they're not. What virtual events essentially can now become are just a layer of technology to maybe start engaging your audience even before the event starts.
Yeah. So how do you, it was almost impossible to gather the data at a physical event, right? Because you couldn't watch everybody doing everything. You didn't know that Bob was talking to Lisa about this thing or that thing. You didn't have any record of it. Really, you may have had those internal event technologies where, like, you set up a meeting and stuff like that. But it's very different than this, where it's just constant. It's like stream of data getting. How do you then take that learning and bring it to the hybrid event so that even at the event, you can still gather some of that data that you can easily, I put it in quotes, gather during a virtual event? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll give you a very straightforward example for that. Right? The kind of virtual events that we hosted, most of them were exhibitions and trade shows. So what that meant was people would log in onto the platform. They would maybe attend a session for some time, but what the organizers expected these attendees to do is to visit a variety of booths. Now, let's take renewable energy for example. So renewable energy has about 100 different companies who are all setting up a virtual booth on the platform.
Yep.
Now, every time a visitor visits any of these booths, because it's a virtual platform, because it's a digital arena, you get a digital footprint of that person. You get to know how many booths this person has visited, what time has he spent here, what kind of people has he talked to, what kind of documents he's downloaded, and if he's watched some products, if he's sent a query. All of that is captured, right? What we did was we used the same experience to replicate that for in-person exhibitions as well now. So one of the techs that we are working on right now would be these smart badges, right? You see that people when participating in events, they wear these badges. What we've done is we've enabled them with QRs, and every time I go to an event, I could just scan that QR to just check in. That's one. So the organizer knows that I'm at the venue. But besides that, we also have these digital scanners at all these booths, all the conferencing area, even the food area, and that is why I'm able to now, as an organizer, I'm able to know that okay, what time is Mayank eating and what kind of booths Mayank has visited and whether
Right.
Mayank attended the session or not.
Yes.
So all of that would help us ultimately personalize the experience for these visitors. So next time when he wants to participate in an event, I could simply recommend that okay, these are the booths that you should visit because it's going to make a lot of sense to you.
So the QR codes are interesting, right? But they require activity. They require me to do something. They require my badge to be facing the right way. Is there, and again, I'm not a technologist, I'm just a geek who loves technology, but is there like a way to have a very low power, very inexpensive kind of NFC chip in there that has, and something like that, that has data in it, so you can actually follow me around? Of course, I give you the right to do this when I join the event. And then I don't have to actively do anything, but when I run into you, it knows who you are, it knows who I am, it knows we were there for 15, all this type of stuff, along with some of the other things, so you can gather some of that data. You're both shaking your head at me, so go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there are,
Nice
because there
idea.
are and there are 10 different ways of doing the same thing, Michael. I'll just give you a very simple example of QR codes because I think that was easily understandable.
Yep.
But we could also do that with face recognition.
Yeah, can be.
You go into a venue, you go into a venue, you just show your face, the organizer knows you're at the venue, you could, and then, go to different areas. People know that you're there. You could use these NFC cards, you could use RFID beacons. There are, multiple ways of doing it. It's just based on how convenient it is for the organizer and, how much they are willing to make it happen.
So, Michael, I think in conclusion, what like we can say here is that we need to be innovative. We have seen the phase of events industry when it was completely virtual. Now it is coming out of pandemic, and we need to apply that data layer, that digital layer on top of the in-person events. And while we are doing that, I don't think we have reached that stage of the maximum innovation. I think we are in the process, and a lot of things needs to be done. And I think smart badges, as we said, so it's just the name. It can have QR code, it can have NFC, but it is going to evolve to a certain extent that where maybe the conversation is also getting recorded and people are getting the AI transcripts of the conversation they had while they were at the event. So possibilities are endless, and I think there are exciting times lying ahead. And in Samaaro, we are constantly thinking about ideas. And I think, Michael, we need to be in constant touch with you for more ideas on the tech we are building.
So I don't really want to let you guys go because I have so many more things to talk about, but I want to ask you this too. Are there untapped, and I think the answer to this is yes, but I'm just curious about the things you've already thought of. You're building all this really interesting technology, right? And you're digging deeply into this use case, but you must know in the back of your mind, and the team must know, and in your team conversations, right? Like I'll put it in quotes again, in the writing room. If you're familiar with the way TV works, where people are just sitting around sharing ideas about things that are potentially funny, but in this case, potentially productive, there must be other use cases where people think, if we could install some of this technology here or there, then we could do this. Like we could have an entire podcast. It's an immersive experience where people feel like they're in the same room, and all the transcription, like all these things that you're doing. You saw me change my background before because it was taking up too much bandwidth. But I could literally mimic the room you're in if you gave me that file before we start. There are plenty of ways to do this. Do you see other untapped use cases as well that maybe other people haven't considered yet for all the tech you're building?
So, Michael, another thing which is at the top of my head right now, because we focus mostly on the B2B marketing events where brands are the ones who actually power the whole event. They actually provide the funds to host that event. So, next thing that we're going to see is that how brands are generating leads from these events. So instead of just focusing on the networking and how people are connecting with each other, it is very important that you can make sense of the data that is being generated in the events for the brands that are participating. So Mayank told about one use case where booths are having their digital footprint. Other than that, we can also start engaging the audience before the event starts with the brand by having matchmaking with like what are you basically interested in before the event. While you are registering, you can get that data. So Michael is a person who is interested in this type of food, this type of products, this type of gadgets, and when you go to that particular event, it starts recommending the brands that are basically
Would make sense
which will make sense to you. So I think there can be an AI layer that will get developed, which will make more sense for the brands to connect with attendees and then generate leads out of it. So this is one of the ideas I think we are actually working on, and which will become big in the coming times.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see that. Man, go ahead.
Adding a point here, so see, when we talk about the event industry, right? Purnank and I constantly, see what are the areas of improvement, and we broadly divide the entire ecosystem into four parts. The first part being the registration aspect, where your whole team is dedicated to just getting more and more registrations, and then probably try and converting them into attendance. Second aspect would be the conferencing bit where you bring in speakers, have panel discussions. So how can you improve the experience for the speakers and for the audience there? It could be, about making the sessions more interactive. It could be about making them more accessible to maybe the differently able people out there. Third aspect is probably the most critical one, which is about networking, which is probably why people go and participate in events. And finally, the fourth aspect is about revenue generation, which is sponsorship, exhibitions, lead generation that Purnank just talked about. So I think it's very important that you either focus on one very specific area and see how you can add more value to any of these four verticals, or you could try and build something for one of the stakeholders, which could be a brand, which could be the audience or the organizers themselves.
Okay, boys, one more thing. And again, this is just me just like freelancing because I find this super interesting. If you're doing a hybrid event, right? So you talked before the pandemic about wearing goggles and stuff like that and building these immersive experiences inside of goggles, right? And to be fair, I've spoken to Alvin Wong Graylin from HTC about this, and I just threw it at him and I said, when we get to the point where the goggles are no longer necessary, right? Because they're big and nobody really wants to wear them, where it's just like a contact lens. You throw a contact lens, and inside that contact lens, there's enough sort of visual, sensory, but also enough technology, enough battery life that it mimics the experience of having the goggles on. Then do you have this experience of whether it's a virtual event for people that can't attend and the people that are at the physical event, because there are plenty of times where like, I can't get to it, but I want to meet Purnank in person, but we're not there. But if I have the virtual experience without goggles and craziness, which is too expensive and just too much of a pain for me, but I feel like I'm at the event as well, are you thinking about how to make that too? I mean, I know it's not today, but you understand my point, right?
Definitely, Michael. And I'm already there, like as you're explaining, that I'm wearing a contact lens that is kind of an AR glass. And while I'm going around the physical event, I'm also seeing virtual avatars of the people who are attending the same event online.
Correct.
So that can be really crazy. And I think that can be the ultimate version of hybrid events, where there is no boundary dividing if you are attending it virtually or physically. Yeah, but to be honest, like we have worked in the virtual reality and augmented reality field before. And when we were working on the idea of Samaaro, we thought of building something where you can attend the event wearing the virtual reality headset. But again, the same thing, the cost of and the usability of the headsets actually did not take us on that path. But I think going forward, the events might start happening in metaverse. I think all other people are doing it, but for metaverse, it needs to be more. I think more internet penetration is required, more accessibility is required, because event has to be something which can reach to the even the remotest corner of the world. But yeah, as we see that getting covered, we will see such use cases coming up like AR glasses, metaverse, and all those sort of things.
Okay.
Still need to overcome the scalability challenges.
For sure. I just wanted to throw it out there because I think about.
But that's a brilliant idea, actually, Michael. I enjoyed listening this.
Yeah.
Okay, boys. Unless there's something else you want to cover, I'm going to let you go. Purnank, Prakash, Mayank, Banka, the co-founders of Samaaro. You guys were awesome. I really appreciate your time today. And as you continue to develop, I'd love to have you back on to talk about how things are changing and how things are evolving. I really appreciate both of your time today.
It would be a pleasure, Michael. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure talking to you. I think there were some lists that we ourselves hadn't explored, which we did today on the call. Because as entrepreneurs, we only talk about the business, about the product. But this was the first time when we sat with someone and talked about our past life, what we are doing actually. It gives us a lot of perspective to reflect what we are doing at this moment. So thank you so much for giving this opportunity. And definitely, I think you have brilliant ideas, and we will be in touch with you, sharing what we are building at Samaaro. And if you like something, please comment on that.